When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back in the body of a 20-year-old. Right at this moment, my sister Lily, no blood relation to me, was in the middle of a screaming match with her obscenely wealthy boyfriend, Dylan Harris. Reason was laughably trivial. She didn't want to have children, claiming that any man who asked her to was a man who didn't truly love her. In my last life, I watched her throw away a fortune that others could only dream of. That same night, Dylan, drunk and disoriented, stumbled into the wrong room. My room. I shoved him away in a panic. I spent the rest of that life being stupid and poor. This time, I looked at my own plain, unremarkable face in the mirror, and I smiled. I knew my chance had come, the chance to pick up the scraps Lily discarded and turn them into a life of unimaginable luxury. The Ashford family's villa was ablaze with light. I walked out of the kitchen with a platter of sliced fruit, just in time to hear Lily's shrill voice cut through the living room's opulent calm. "Dylan, I told you I don't want to have kids. Who the hell is your mother to pressure me? Is that all you see me as too? Some kind of baby machine?" Beneath the crystal chandelier, the line of Dylan's jaw was hard as granite. He pinched the bridge of his nose, refusing to look at her. "Lily, my mother was just making a casual comment. We're not even married yet." "Not yet, but what about later? Can you promise me your family isn't just after my womb to pop out in air?" Lily pressed on her exquisitely made-up face, flushed with anger. I lowered my eyes, placing the fruit platter silently on the coffee table, trying to make myself invisible. I was the Ashford's ward, Alara. In my last life, this exact argument was the catalyst. Billy stormed off on a flight to Europe, and Dylan drank himself into a stupor at a bar. He was supposed to stay in the guest room the Ashfords had prepared for him, but he got the doors mixed up and found his way into mine instead. In the darkness, I smelled the sharp scent of alcohol on him. Then, with all my strength, I pushed him away and fled. I clung to my ridiculous pride, and in return, got an even more difficult existence in the Ashford house, followed by a lifetime of struggling at the bottom. This time I wouldn't push him away. The fight in the living room raged on. "Dylan, if you don't give me a straight answer right now, we're through." "Lily, don't be unreasonable." "I'm being unreasonable?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Fine then, we're through." She snatched her Hermes bag from the sofa and stormed out of the villa without a backward glance. Dylan remained on the sofa, motionless. After a long while, he picked up his car keys from the table and left. I knew where he was going. Obsidian, the most extravagant nightclub in the city. I retreated to my own cramped, gloomy room in the attic, shedding the drab, gray dress of a housemaid for the only decent piece of clothing I owned, a simple white dress. And I waited. At midnight, my phone rang. It was Hanson, the family butler, his voice laced with anxiety. "Miss Alara, Mr. Harris is intoxicated and insists on coming back to the villa. Could you please open the main gate? We need to get him to the guest room." "Of course, Mr. Hanson." I hung up, my heart pounding against my ribs like a war drum. This was it. I didn't go to the main gate. Instead, I went straight to the second-floor guest room, the one directly across the hall from my attic stairs. I left the door to the guest room slightly ajar. Then I returned to my own room and did the same, leaving a small crack. Half an hour later, I heard the sound of a car engine below, followed by the heavy, shuffling footsteps of men helping someone up the stairs. Footsteps stopped right outside the guest room. "Mr. Harris, we're here. You can rest inside." The door was pushed open, then closed. I held my breath, my eyes glued to that closed door. The guest room door was suddenly yanked open. Dylan's tall frame filled the doorway. He was unsteady on his feet, his eyes glazed over. He was clearly very drunk. He seemed to be looking for something, stumbling as he moved. Yet his path was taking him step by step toward my room. My heart leaped into my throat. In my last life, this is exactly what happened. He mistook my room for the master suite, where he and Lily had spent so many nights together. He pushed open my door. The heavy smell of alcohol washed over me. This time I didn't scream. I didn't back away. I just stood there, watching him. He mistook me for Lily, murmuring her name. "Lily." Arching hand clamped around my wrist, pulling me into a searing embrace. This time I didn't push him away. Rather than struggle in the mud my whole life, I would use every chip I had, even my own body, to claw my way out. Next morning, sunlight streamed through the crack in the window. I woke up first. I slipped out of bed, silently dressed, and then sat in the chair by the bedside, waiting for him to wait. About half an hour later, Dylan's eyelashes fluttered. He slowly opened his eyes. His expression shifted from foggy confusion to shock upon seeing me, to utter disbelief, as he took in the unfamiliar, shabby room. Finally, his gaze landed on me, sharp and filled with an icy rage. You. His voice was hoarse, laced with danger. I met his gaze without flinching, my expression calm. Mr. Harris, you were drunk last night. He shot up, the blanket sliding off his torso, revealing a lean, muscular chest. His eyes fell on the damning crimson stain on the sheets. His face grew even darker. He got out of bed and began to dress, his movements sharp with frustrated anger. He didn't say a single word. The air in the room was so thick with tension, it felt hard to breathe. Once dressed, he pulled a black card from his wallet and tossed it onto my small desk. And his 6 zeros. His tone was glacial. Forget what happened last night. That he opened the door and left without looking back. I stared at the black card on the desk, not moving to pick it up. I knew this was only the beginning. I walked to the window and watched Dylan's car speed away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. It wasn't long before my door was kicked open. Lily burst in, her eyes red-rimmed and wild, clearly having been up all night. Her gaze immediately locked onto the black card on my desk, then to the faint, telltale marks on my neck that I hadn't been able to hide. Comprehension dawned, and she let out a piercing scream. Alara, how dare you seduce Dylan? She lunged at me, her hand raised to strike. I didn't move. I knew I had to take this. Slap. Crack sound echoed in the small room. My face stung, burning hot. How could you? How could you? Lily was hysterical, grabbing my hair and trying to drag me to the floor. I let her pull at me, my own gaze unnervingly calm. Sister, I said, my voice quiet but clear enough for her to hear. You were the one who didn't want him. Those words were the spark that ignited the bonfire of her fury. Lily froze. She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. What did you say? I said you were the one who didn't want Mr. Harris. I repeated, enunciating every word. You pushed him away, didn't you? Who the hell do you think you are? You think you have the right to pick up my sloppy seconds? She shrieked, raising her hand again. This time her wrist was caught in a firm grip. Hanson, the butler, was standing in the doorway, several other maids behind him. They had seen everything. Miss Lily, your father and mother have asked to see you downstairs, Hanson said, his voice grave. Lily wrenched her hand free, shooting me a look of pure hatred. Alara, just you wait. She stormed downstairs. I smoothed my rumpled clothes and hair, then picked up the black card from the desk and slipped it into my pocket. Then I followed her down. My nest egg, the first real money I'd ever had. In the Ashfords' living room, Mr. and Mrs. Ashford sat on the sofa, their faces grim. Lily stood before them, tears streaming down her face. Dad, Mom, you have to do something. Alara. She climbed into Dylan's bed. I ascended the staircase and stood in the center of the room. All eyes were on me. Scorn, fury, a hint of morbid curiosity. Mr. Ashford slammed his hand on the table and pointed at me. Alara, you have the nerve to show your face. We raised you for all these years. And this is how you repay us? I did nothing wrong, I answered calmly. You dare to deny it? Mrs. Ashford shrieked. Lily saw it. The card Dylan gave you. I took the black card from my pocket and placed it on the coffee table. This card was compensation for Mr. Harris. Compensation? Lily sneered. What a nice way of putting it. It's the money you earned for selling yourself, isn't it? I lifted my eyes to meet hers. Sister, if you hadn't broken up with Mr. Harris, would he have been drunk last night? If you hadn't stormed out on him, would he have even come here? You. Lily was speechless. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, I said, lowering my gaze. My voice tinged with a well-practiced vulnerability. Mr. Harris was drunk. He thought I was you. I couldn't fight him off. My story was a cocktail of truth and lies. But it was enough to soften the expressions of Mr. and Mrs. Ashford. What? The I cared about most was their relationship with the Harris family. That's enough. Mr. Ashford silenced Lily, who was about to argue further. This matter is not to be spoken of again. Alara, go back to your room. You are not to come out without my permission. He was putting me under house arrest. I didn't resist. I turned obediently and went upstairs. Back in my room, I locked the door. Step 1 was complete. Now all I had to do was wait for Dylan's next move. I was confined for 3 days. I didn't go anywhere, just stayed in my room and read. Lily would come to my door every day to hurl insults at me, each more vile than the last. Ignored her. I knew the more she behaved like this, the more immature she would seem to Mr. and Mrs. Ashford. On the morning of the 4th day, My phone rang an unknown number. I answered. Hello. It's me, Dylan. My heart skipped a beat, but my voice remained steady. Mr. Harris, is something wrong? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Did you get the money from the card? I did. Buy yourself whatever you need. His tone was that of a benefactor bestowing charity. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'll be there tonight. He stated it as a fact, then hung up. I clutched the phone, letting out a long, slow breath. The fish was on the hook. That evening, I took a shower and changed back into the white dress. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford were out, and Lily had gone to a party. The villa was quiet. Around 10 o'clock, Dylan's car pulled up to the gate. I went downstairs and opened the door for him. He smelled faintly of alcohol, but he wasn't drunk. He walked into the living room, sat on the sofa, and loosened his tie. He looked at me, his expression complicated. Did they give you a hard time? I shook my head and sat on the sofa opposite him.
No.
I know Lily's temper, he said, almost to himself, as if explain something. She's just spoiled. I didn't respond, just listened quietly. He didn't seem to need an answer. After a moment of silence, he stood up and walked toward me. He loomed over me, reaching out to grip my chin. That night, why didn't you push me away? I tilted my head back, looking directly into his deep, fathomless eyes. Why would I push you away? His fingers tightened, a sharp pain radiating through my jaw. You know who I am. It wasn't a question. I know, I said, not looking away. You're Dylan Harris, the man Lily threw away. A storm gathered in the dark depths of his eyes. You've got a lot of nerve. He let out a cold laugh and released me. He turned as if to leave, but in the instant he turned, I wrapped my arms around him from behind. His body went rigid. Mr. Harris, I whispered, my cheek pressed against his broad back. My brother is sick. He needs a lot of money for surgery. This was the excuse I had prepared for myself. A story plausible enough to lower his guard, and perhaps even stir a flicker of pity. In my past life, my brother had died a slow, painful death because we couldn't afford his surgery. This time, I wouldn't let that happen. Dylan's body slowly relaxed, didn't turn around, nor did he push me away. How much? $50,000. He was silent. I could feel him weighing the options, weighing the $50,000 against me, deciding if I was worth it. Isn't there money on the card? He finally asked. I gave the card to my parents.
Elite.
They said it was my fault and that I couldn't keep the money. I was painting myself as an innocent, pitiful victim, oppressed by my own family, and especially proud. Privileged men like Dylan were suckers for that kind of story. He finally turned to face me. He studied me, his eyes filled with a mix of scrutiny, suspicion, and a flicker of something playful. I can give you the $50,000, he said, then paused before adding, but on one condition. Dylan's thumb traced the line of my jaw, his touch searingly hot against my cool.
15.
His eyes were dark, swirling with a mixture of wounded pride, residual intoxication, and something far more predatory. You become mine, he said quietly, his voice dropping an octave. Not Lily's. Quiet shadow. Not the Ashford house servant.
Mine.
Whenever I call, wherever I. You don't ask questions, you don't demand a title, and you never, ever let Lily know. A transaction. Raw, cold, and entirely stripped of romance. In my past life, I would have been humiliated. I would have slapped his face, wept over my lost dignity, and slunk back into my attic room to starve on my righteous pride. This time, I didn't even blink. Pride was a luxury for the rich. Survival was the necessity of the poor. $50,000 directly into the hospital's bank account tonight. I replied, my tone flat, bargaining like a merchant in a night market. I want the surgery confirmation from the chief surgeon at St. Jude's before sunrise. Dylan let out a harsh, incredulous laugh, his hand slipping from my jaw to grip my throat lightly, not to strangle, but to assert dominance. Bargaining with me? Alara? You're bolder than you look. I have nothing else to lose, Mr. Harris, I whispered, leaning slightly into his touch, forcing my eyes to shimmer with a delicate, calculated desperation. My brother's dying. If you give me the money, my body, my secret, my life, they are all yours. For a long moment, the heavy silence stretched between us in the dimly lit living room. I could hear the rhythmic ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner. Then Dylan pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it up to my face. A transfer confirmation screen. $50,000 sent to St. Jude's Memorial Hospital. Patient, Ethan Ashford. Done, Dylan said softly, his breath brushing against my ear. Now prove to me You're worth the investment. That night, there were no sweet promises, no tenderness. It was a cold, fierce exchange of dominance and surrender. But as I lay in the dark, listening to the quiet, even breathing of the most powerful man in the city beside me, I didn't feel defeated. I felt the first taste of power. At 5 a.m., before the sun broke over the horizon and before the household servants woke up, Dylan dressed in silence. He tossed a small, sleek silver key onto my bedside table. An apartment in the Riverside district, he said, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. Keycard code is 0914. Go there every Friday evening. Don't make me wait. Yes, Mr. Harris, I murmured, pulling the sheet up to my collarbone, acting every bit the meek, obedient mistress he expected. He paused at the door, glancing back at my pale, plain face. For a second, a flicker of confusion crossed his sharp features, as if he couldn't quite reconcile the quiet girl in the bed with the absolute silence he felt around her. Then, he turned and vanished into the morning mist. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the chief surgeon at St. Jude's. The funds have been received in full. Ethan's emergency heart surgery is scheduled for 9 a.m. today. I closed my eyes, a genuine tear finally slipping down my cheek. Ethan, my sweet brother. In my last life, he died at 19 because the Ashfords refused to advance us his medical fees, claiming he was just an adopted orphan not worth the investment. This time, I had saved him. When I walked downstairs at 8 a.m., the Ashford household was already in chaos. Lily was sitting at the marble dining table, her eyes swollen and red, furiously smashing her silver fork against a plate of eggs. Mrs. Ashford was hovering over her, applying ice packs to her daughter's face, while Mr. Ashford paced back and forth, holding a cigar that had gone out. He hasn't answered my calls, Lily shrieked, slamming her phone down. I sent him 20 messages. He's never ignored me like this before. It's all because of that tramp. She pointed a finger straight at me as I entered the dining hall carrying a tray of fresh tea. Mrs. Ashford turned on me like a viper, her eyes venomous. Alara, you shameless little bitch. Look at what you've done to your sister. Dylan left the city this morning because he was disgusted by what happened. I lowered my head, keeping my expression entirely vacant, full of fear and remorse.
I'm sorry, Auntie.
I didn't mean to.
Sorry.
Is sorry going to fix the Harris family alliance? Mr. Ashford roared, stomping toward me. He snatched the teacup from my tray and hurled it onto the floor at my feet. Hot liquid splashed against my ankles, burning through my cheap fabric socks, but I didn't flinch. If Dylan cuts ties with our company over this scandal, I will throw you out onto the streets to rot. Dad, don't just throw her out. Lily snarled, her face contorted with malice. Make her scrub the entire mansion from top to bottom. Make her apologize to me. On her knees. I'll do it, I said quickly, my voice trembling delightfully. I'll clean everything. Please don't throw me out. I have nowhere to go. Pathetic, Lily spat, looking at me with absolute disgust. Look at you. Plain, ugly, and groveling. You honestly thought Dylan would want a dirty little orphan like you? He was drunk. To him, you were nothing more than a trash can to dump. His urges. I kept my head bowed, so they couldn't see the cold, mocking smile playing on my lips. Keep thinking that, Lily, I thought. Keep believing I am nothing. For the next 3 days, I played the helpless victim to perfection. I scrubbed the floors, washed Lily's designer clothes by hand, and took every insult they threw at me without a single word of complaint. The Ashfords grew complacent. They believed I was thoroughly broken, terrified, and subdued. They didn't know that every afternoon, while they were out at high society luncheons, I was sitting in my attic room with a second cheap burner phone I had bought with cash. In my previous life, I had lived until I was 35. I remembered the financial disasters and massive corporate shifts that rocked the city during these exact years. I remembered that in 2 weeks, a seemingly worthless piece of wasteland in the West District, the northern suburbs industrial zone, would suddenly be announced as the new site for the city's high-speed rail hub. The land value would skyrocket by 2,000% overnight. I took the remaining money from Dylan's black card, the card I had lied about, giving to my parents, and secretly opened an anonymous offshore trading account.
I
Put every single penny into options and land shares for the northern suburbs. I wasn't just going to rely on Dylan's charity. A mistress was disposable. A financial tycoon was not. Friday evening arrived. Lily had dolled herself up in a backless red dress, spraying half a bottle of expensive perfume, determined to crash Dylan's private club in town to reclaim her man. The Ashfords fully supported her, giving her the keys to their best sports car. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, I washed the kitchen tiles, put on a simple navy blue trench coat over a modest linen dress, and quietly left. Through the back gate. The Riverside District apartment was located on the 45th floor of a high-rise luxury tower overlooking the river. I used the silver key, scanned my palm, and the door unlocked with a soft chime. The interior was stark, modern, dominated by black marble, dark wood, and floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the city lights. It smelled faintly of cedarwood and expensive whiskey, Dylan's signature scent. I didn't sit on the sofa like a guest. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and checked the contents. It was practically empty, save for a few bottles of sparkling water and liquor. I tied my hair up, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work. By 9 p.m., the front door unlocked. Dylan stepped in, looking exhausted.
His
tie was loosened, his jacket thrown carelessly over his arm, his eyes shadowed with stress. The Harris Group was currently in the middle of a cutthroat bidding war for a massive green energy contract, a struggle I remembered clearly from my past life. He froze when he smelled the aroma of rich, slow-simmered beef broth and roasted vegetables filling the penthouse. I walked out of the kitchen holding a bowl of soup, wearing a soft white apron. "You're back, Mr. Harris," I said softly, giving him a warm, gentle smile. The exact opposite of the fiery, demanding, hysterical tantrums Lily always gave him. Dylan stared at me, his icy blue eyes blinking in rare confusion. "What is this? You've been drinking a lot lately, and your stomach must hurt," I said quietly, placing the bowl on the dining table. "I prepared some light soup and simple dishes. If you don't like it, I can order something else." Dylan stood there for a long moment, staring at the steaming bowl, then at me. His harsh posture subtly relaxed. He dropped his jacket onto a chair and sat down at the table without a word. He took a sip of the broth. It was perfectly seasoned, soothing his irritated throat and tired body. He ate in silence while I stood quietly to the side, ready to refill his water or pass him a napkin. I didn't ask him for money.
I
Didn't bring up Lily. I didn't complain about my life. I was creating a sanctuary for him, a quiet, frictionless world where he didn't have to fight. After he finished eating, Dylan leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Lily went to the Dynasty Club tonight looking for me." "I know," I replied smoothly. "She spent 3 hours doing her makeup." "You aren't jealous?" Dylan tested, his tone sharp, probing for my hidden motives. "Why should I be?" I met his gaze calmly. "She is your girlfriend in the eyes of the world. I am just the person who prepares your dinner when you are tired." A dark, complex emotion flashed across Dylan's eyes. He stood up, walked over to me, and gripped my waist, pulling me close. "You're a terrifyingly compliant girl, Alara. Or a very smart one." "I just know my place," I whispered, resting my hands against his chest. He lifted me onto the marble counter, his lips crashing down on mine with a sudden, needy intensity. This time it wasn't just raw lust, it was a man seeking refuge from a brutal world. And I gave him exactly what he needed, while secretly counting the seconds until he was entirely dependent on my presence. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Ethan's surgery was a complete success. I visited him secretly at the hospital, twice a week, paying for a private nurse to look after him under an assumed
name.
Seeing my brother healthy, his cheeks rosy again, gave me the iron resolve. I needed to push my plan into high gear. Meanwhile, the Ashford household was sinking into anxiety. Lily had tried everything to get Dylan back, bombarding him with texts, waiting outside his office, throwing publicly staged dramatic scenes, but Dylan remained entirely cold. He didn't break up with her officially, nor did he meet her.
He
Simply froze her out. The reason was simple. Every Friday and Tuesday night, Dylan was at the Riverside penthouse, wrapped in my arms, eating my home-cooked meals and laying his head on my lap while I softly massaged his temples. I had become his quiet addiction. One rainy evening, while Dylan was working late on his laptop in the penthouse study, he slammed his fist onto the desk in frustration. "Damn it," he cursed under his breath. "The board is leaning toward the Vance Group for the West District Development Project. Old Man Vance is offering a 30% stake to the local government officials. I walked in carrying a cup of chamomile tea. I placed it gently beside his elbow, peering casually at the financial reports spread across the desk. 30% seems desperate, I remarked softly, as if speaking to myself. Dylan looked up, annoyed. What do you know about business? Nothing much, I said meekly, taking a step back. I just remember listening to my uncle talk about the Vance Group supply chains last year. He said they were secretly outsourcing their primary steel manufacturing to uncertified factories in the South to cut costs. If the government finds out during the bidding phase, wouldn't a 30% stake just look like a bribe to cover up safety violations? Dylan froze. His eyes narrowed sharply as he digested my words. In my past life, the Vance Group had won that bid, only for the steel scandal to break 6 months later, causing a massive infrastructure collapse that bankrupted their partners. Dylan had narrowly avoided that disaster back then, but now he could use it to crush them before the bid. Where did you hear that? Dylan asked, his voice dead serious, rising from his
chair.
Just idle gossip among the house drivers and staff, I lied smoothly, looking intimidated by his intense gaze. Did I say something wrong, Mr. Harris? Dylan stared at me for a long time. Then, a slow, dark smile spread across his handsome face. He walked over, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me deeply. You didn't say anything wrong, Alara, he murmured against my lips. You might have just saved me $50 million. The next morning, Dylan launched a targeted audit request against the Vance Group. Within 48 hours, the Vance Group was caught in a massive federal investigation for safety fraud. The Harris Group swept in and secured the West District contract exclusively. That week, Dylan bought me a diamond necklace worth $200,000. I didn't wear it. I put it straight into a private safety deposit box at the bank, alongside my growing portfolio of land options. By the 4th month, the government officially announced the high-speed rail project in the northern suburbs. The financial market exploded. The land options I had bought 4 months ago for a mere $50,000 were now worth an astounding $1.2 million. Overnight, I was no longer a penniless ward. I was a millionaire in secret. While I was quietly building my empire, the Ashford family was facing a total collapse. Mr. Ashford had foolishly invested the family's entire liquid capital and leveraged their villa as collateral into a real estate venture spearheaded by the Vance Group. When the Vance Group was destroyed by Dylan's corporate strike, the Ashfords lost everything. They needed money, and they needed it immediately. Their only salvation was to force Lily to marry into a rich family, or to force Dylan Harris to bail them
out.
One afternoon, I returned to the Ashford villa from visiting my brother. As soon as I walked through the door, a crystal vase shattered against the wall right beside my head. Where the hell have you been? Lily shrieked. She looked haggard, her designer clothes rumpled, her face pale with desperation. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford were sitting on the couch, surrounded by debt collection notices. Alara, Mr. Ashford said, his tone no longer arrogant, but raspy and menacing. Come here. I walked over slowly, keeping my face passive. Yes, uncle? Dylan Harris hasn't been taking Lily's calls, but our sources say he was seen near the Riverside district several times, Mr. Ashford said, glaring at me with dark, desperate eyes. You were his bedwarmer that night. Do you have his private secretary's number?
No, small.
Mr. Harris blocked my number months ago.
He
threatened to sue me if I ever contacted him again. Useless trash, Mrs. Ashford yelled, slapping the table. We gave you food and shelter for 10 years, and you can't even get us a phone number. Wait, Lily suddenly said, her eyes narrowing as she stepped closer to me.
She
sniffed the air around me. What is that smell? My heart gave a sharp thud, but I kept my posture completely still. That perfume. Lily's face contorted with shock and fury. She lunged forward and tore open the collar of my trench coat. Underneath, I was wearing a simple silk blouse, a gift from Dylan that I had forgotten to change out of, and around my wrist was a subtle, custom-made Patek Philippe watch that Dylan had placed on my nightstand just 2 days ago. This watch. Lily screamed, her voice reaching an octave that shattered the silence of the room. This is the limited edition piece Dylan bought at the Geneva auction last month. It was custom engraved. I saw it on his Instagram preview. She violently grabbed my wrist, turning the watch over. On the back, exquisitely engraved, were 2 letters, D and A. Dylan and Alara. The living room went dead silent. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford stood up slowly, staring at the watch, then at me, as if seeing a ghost. You, Lily gasped, tears of pure rage spilling from her eyes. You little sly bitch. It was you all along. You've been seeing him behind my back. You've been his whore for 4 months. Slap her. Mom, hit her. Lily shrieked, going entirely hysterical. She lunged at me with her nails aimed at my face. This time, I didn't take the hit. Before her hand could touch my skin, I reached out, caught her wrist in midair with an iron grip, and twisted it back. Lily gasped in pain, forced to her knees.
Ah.
Let go of me, you crazy orphan. Alara, how dare you violence your sister? Mr. Ashford roared, stepping forward. To strike me. I pulled a small, sleek black folder from my handbag and slammed it onto the coffee table with immense force. Touch me, uncle, I said, my voice no longer timid, soft, or obedient.
It was
icy, sharp, and ringing with absolute authority. Touch me, and I will ensure the bank liquidates this villa by 5 p.m. today. Mr. Ashford froze, his hand suspended in midair. What did you say? Read the documents, I commanded calmly, shoving Lily away so hard she tumbled onto the plush carpet. Mrs. Ashford hastily picked up the folder and opened it, her face drained of all color instantly. This is the mortgage deed for a house. How do you have this? 3 weeks ago, when your real estate firm failed, the bank put your mortgage up for private sale to recoup their losses. I sat down slowly on the single-arm sofa, crossing my legs with an elegance that made Lily look like a street thug. I bought the debt. In the eyes of the law, I am no longer your poor ward, uncle. I am your primary creditor. You, where did you get millions of dollars? Mr. Ashford screamed, his eyes bloodshot with disbelief. Did Dylan give you this money? Where I got the money is none of your concern, I smiled, a dark, satisfying chill running through my veins as I watched the high and mighty Ashfords tremble before me. What matters is that this house, the cars in the garage, and even the clothes on your back now belong to me. You snake. Lily wept, scrambling up from the floor. You stole my man. You stole my life. Dylan loves me. He only used you because you look like a cheap housemaid. If he loved you. I turned my head, looking down at Lily with profound pity. He wouldn't have spent every single Tuesday and Friday night in my bed while ignoring your 300 desperate text messages. I'll tell him, Lily shrieked, pulling out her phone frantically. I'll tell him you calculated everything. I'll tell him you bought our debt. I'll show him how scheming and evil you really are. He will hate you. Go ahead. I leaned back, resting my chin on my hand. Call him. Put it on speaker. Lily's hands shook violently as she dialed Dylan's private number, a number he had refused to pick up for her in 4 months. To her shock, the call connected on the second ring. Lily, Dylan's cold, impatient voice echoed through the speaker. I told you to. Stop calling me. Dylan. Oh God, Dylan, listen to me. Lily sobbed hysterically into the phone. Alara has been deceiving you. She's a monster. She bought my family's house. Debt. She tricked you into sleeping with her. She's been using you for money. She's standing right here laughing at us. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Dylan's voice came through, remarkably calm, entirely devoid of surprise. Is she on speaker? Dylan asked.
yes.
Yes, she's listening. Tell her to drop the debt. Tell her she's nothing to you. Lily cried out triumphantly. Alara, Dylan's deep, velvety voice resonated in the silent room. Did you buy the Ashford villa without telling me? I did, Mr. Harris, I said calmly toward the phone. It was a good investment. A soft, low chuckle came from the speaker, a sound so filled with indulgence and amused affection that it shattered Lily's heart into 1,000 pieces. You should have told me, Dylan said smoothly. I could have bought it for you. For half the price. Are you coming to the penthouse tonight? I had the chef prepare the king crab you liked. Lily's phone slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, as if I were a demon, rising from hell. He knew, Lily whispered, her voice cracking. He knew all along. Dylan isn't a fool, Lily. I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. He always knew.
I was smart.
He just preferred a smart woman who creates value over a spoiled girl who complains about having babies. Within 48 hours, the Ashford family's eviction notices were served. Mr. Ashford was forced to declare personal bankruptcy. The man who had once treated me like cattle was now forced to sell his luxury watches and liquidate his remaining assets just to pay off lingering business debts. Mrs. Ashford suffered a nervous breakdown and was admitted to a public ward. And Lily? Lily went to Dylan's corporate office building, causing a massive public scene. In the lobby, screaming that I was an intruder who ruined her life. Dylan didn't even come down. He simply had security escort her out and filed a permanent restraining order against her. Stripped of her wealth, her status, and her pride, Lily was forced to move into a tiny, dilapidated one-bedroom rental in the dirty outer skirts of the city. The very same kind of room I had suffered in during my past life. The cycle of karma was complete. On the night the Ashfords moved out, I walked into the grand master suite of the
villa.
Workers were already redecorating the place, removing all of Lily's pink, extravagant decor and replacing it with modern, minimalist art. The heavy oak doors opened behind me. Dylan walked in, wearing a sharp black suit, a bouquet of rare black orchids in his hands. He walked up behind me, wrapping his long arms around my waist, burying his face in the crook of my neck. "You cleared out the entire family in 3 days," Dylan murmured, his voice thick with admiration and amusement. "You really are ruthless, Alara." I turned around in his arms, looking up into his dark, piercing eyes. "Are you afraid of me, Mr. Harris?" "Afraid?" Dylan smirked, leaning down to press his lips against mine, deep and possessive. "I've never been more turned on in my life. A soft, brainless bird gets boring after a week, but a woman who can conquer a kingdom on her own, that's someone worth keeping." "I'm not a trophy to be kept," I reminded him gently, placing my hands on his lapels. "I know," Dylan sighed, pulling a velvet box from his inner jacket pocket. He flipped it open, revealing a flawless 10-carat canary diamond ring that sparkled brilliantly under the crystal chandelier. "That's why I'm not asking you to be my mistress anymore." I looked at the ring, then up at his handsome, proud face. "What are you asking?" I queried softly. "Marry me," Dylan said, his voice stripped of all arrogance, filled with an earnest intensity one had never heard from him before. "Equal partners. The Harris Group and Alara Ashford. We run this city together." I stared at the diamond, remembering my past life, the life where I was poor, helpless, pushing him away out of a foolish, fragile sense of pride, only to die in obscurity while Lily squandered fortunes. This time, I took control of my fate. I took what was thrown away, turned it into gold, and crowned myself queen. I smiled, my plain face illuminated by absolute confidence and power, looking radiant beyond measure. I reached out, took the ring from the box, and slipped it onto my own finger. "Deal, Mr. Harris," I said softly, "but on one condition." Dylan raised an eyebrow, a teasing smile playing on his lips. "Another condition?" "We're having kids," I whispered into his ear, laughing softly as his eyes widened in surprise. "Because unlike Lily, I build empires, and I intend to leave mine to an heir." Dylan let out a rich, joyful laugh, lifting me into his arms and spinning me around in the brightly lit room. Outside the window, the city lights sparkled like millions of diamonds, lighting up the sky of my brand new life.